So what's your name?
My name is Cynda Murray.
And what's your hometown?
Goshen.
And how did you first get connected with St. Mark's?
I was born into the church. My grandparents were coming here. My mom was coming here, and then I was born, and so I started coming here when I was a baby.
And first icebreaker question, what pastimes or activities do you have that cause you to lose track of time?
Spending time with my daughter and my family and friends, my best friend and her daughter, and mainly my family and friends, especially my daughter. So
when you're recharging during your Sabbath, what's one thing that you can do that will instantly brighten your day?
Watching my daughter learn new things. That's the biggest and best thing that brightens my day is watching her and seeing the reaction of something that she just learned. It's like I taught her that, or it's just seeing her and just seeing her smile and being a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's the story of where you come from?
I come from a really close-knit family. We are very open with each other. We talk to each other. We help each other. My family, my mom and dad grew up in Goshen, and so Goshen's basically my home. And I have moved away, but I always end up coming back. If it wasn't for a family, I probably wouldn't be here because it's too cold.
Got it. All right, so Japan, a volcano.
Yeah, Hawaii.
Okay. Living with the lizards out in the Mojave Desert.
Yeah, Australia would be perfect.
Okay, got it.
I'd love to go down to Australia because, it's always warm down there.
And you've always wanted to wrestle a kangaroo.
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kangaroos are amazing.
They're also really powerful. You'd have to be careful.
Yeah, I know that.
So what's the story of where you are now?
Like I said, I grew up in Goshen. I have made some poor choices in my life. I did lose connection with God for a bit of time. But it mainly, my story really starts when my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I really found a connection. I really reached out to God, and I did a lot of praying. I still do a lot of praying. My mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2010, and it was just an ongoing battle. And then I met my husband and fell madly in love. And when I was a kid, or a teenager, I was told that I couldn't have kids. So that was one of my biggest downfalls of my life, was I won't be able to be a mom. And my mom and I always would talk about it. And her and I sat and prayed many, many nights about it. And we've both finally agreed that, you know what, we need to let this go, give it to God, and when God says it's time, He'll make a way. Mm-hmm. And my mom was she loved Jesus with, you could tell that she was satisfied, and she let a lot of things go when she found out she had multiple sclerosis. And then in 2021, the end of March, the end of March, I found out that I was pregnant.
Huh? Miracle baby.
Yes, absolutely. I found out 5 days after my mom's birthday in April that I was 5.5 months pregnant. Had no clue. I was halfway through my pregnancy and didn't even know it. Found out my mom. I told my mom. And my mom was over the moon. She was so excited. She would tell everybody she saw, my baby's having a baby. She was just so excited. She knew that we were having a girl. She knew her name. Then tragedy struck. 10 days before I was due to have my daughter, my mom passed away. That being pregnant and having your mom pass away, and my mom was my best friend. I mean, bottom line, she was my best friend. I went to her for everything and anything. Her and I had a lot of deep talks about different things, and she was just one of the people that I could reach out to for anything, and I knew she would always be there. But like I said, she passed away 10 days before I had my daughter, and that was the hardest funeral I have ever been to in my life. And but then the day my daughter was born, and that first moment, I felt a sense of relief, because the moment I saw my daughter, I saw my mom. And I knew that in those 10 days, my mom spent every waking moment with her. And that just gives me a sense of relief. And I know that God knew what he was doing in my life. He knew he was taking my best friend and giving me a new. And it's just the most incredible thing. And being a mom is hard. I never expected it to be this hard, but I'm doing it because I know my mom is with me.
That's because you have a mini Cynda.
Exactly. She is my mini wherever she went. She definitely is my mini.
I mean, you just made a smaller nuclear reactor.
Exactly. Everybody I run into, everybody I see, all my friends and family, they're like, she is like identical to you. She has some tendencies of her dad, but mainly it's me. And she is just the biggest blessing that I could ask for from God.
Mm-hmm. And what's the story of where you're going?
The story of where I'm going is to have a bigger and deeper love of God and show my daughter that God is always around. He will, he is the creator of all, and I want to make sure that my daughter has a very close relationship with God the way I do now.
And then following up to that, if I were to tell you like a story of, let's say God's in an elevator and he's riding up to like the 7th floor with one of his angels, and turns to his angel and says, "Hey, have you heard about Cynda?" The angel says, "No, I haven't really heard anything about Cynda. What's your story?" What would you want God to say when he tells a story about who you are, when he brags?
That I am a God-fearing and believing, and that I show love, and I have a very big heart for others, and I want nothing but the best in others. I will do anything I can to help someone to my ability, and that I am just, I don't know, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, just that I've got a big heart. I'm very friendly.
Sorry, Aurora.
You're fine.
Aurora's now decided she's going to go of her own volition. As long as it's on her terms.
Yeah.
Not like you at all.
No, not at all.
Of course. For the record, Aurora is your daughter.
Yes, Aurora is my daughter.
Yeah. As far as that whole, story about who you are, what roadmaps? By roadmaps, I mean like mentors, role models, stories, ideas, books, pop culture, what have you. What roadmaps have you been using for charting where God is taking your story?
I would have to say the biggest roadmap would be knowing that God does listen. That when people say I always pray, but I don't get no response, I tell them keep praying, because He does listen. Prayer is the most amazing thing that you can do.
Would you call yourself a prayer warrior?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, cool.
Absolutely. Because like I said, I've been praying to be a mom since I was a kid. You know, I was 12 years old and wanting a kid because I was raising my nephew, helping my sister raise my nephew. And I always wanted to be a mom. And throughout my life, I always had a hole. I had a missing piece. And I always prayed to God, if it be your way, if it be your will, then you will make it happen. You know my story. You know my plan. It's in your hands. And here I am 18 years later, and I'm a mom. So he does listen. And that's one thing I will tell everybody. Pray. It may not be when you want it to be, because it's not the right time. God knows the right time. He knows everything. And he will make a way.
Going back once more to where you've been, what are some of the ways you've been involved with God's mission? What are ways that you've served? What lives have you touched?
I would have to say that one of the I have a friend of mine who has been in and out of addiction quite a while, and I lost contact with her a few years ago, and she was weighing on my mind a lot in the past few months. I reached out to her family and I found out that she was in prison, and I had asked her family to get in contact and let me know if I can reach out to her. Well, I didn't hear nothing back, so I did my research and I found out where she was, and I wrote her a letter. And not thinking about it, you know, I kind of pushed it off to the back burner. And all of a sudden, one day, I get a phone call, and it was from her, from the prison. And she is now, since she's been in prison for at least 3 years. She still has another year and a half left. But she has told me that my letter that I had written her was the best thing that she had ever received, because she knew that I was there. She realized that how much that my friendship with her meant. And once she found out, and when she read my letter and found out that I had a daughter, she goes, "Cynda, I bawled. She goes, I cried more knowing that you had a daughter than you telling me your mom passed away." And I told her, I said, well, I told her the story about what happened, and she said, well, God, and I said, God puts people in our lives, and he takes them out. God puts people in our lives for a reason. And yes, we may love from afar, but we're always going to be there. And she said, that made me realize that I need to stay sober. And she is now working on building her relationship with God, which is incredible. She's, like I said, she is now 3 years sober. Well, not quite 3 years sober, because she admitted that she kind of relapsed in prison. But she now has a reason, and I made that reason more clear to her to stay sober, because she has a daughter of her own, and she,
almost like you're being used for God or something.
Right. And I told her, I said, my daughter is the best thing that's ever happened to me, and you need to wake up and realize you have something to live for. You're not the one suffering throughout the addiction, it's your daughter. Because your daughter has seen what you have done, and she reflects on that, and she will take that into her life, And if you can prove to her that you can stay sober and be there for her and be the mom you need to be, God will make your life way better. You just have to give it to God. Give your life to God, and God is the most amazing man ever. I mean...
Yeah. It's kind of why we're doing all we're doing.
Exactly. And I will continue to speak of him. I will do, if any... I always pray for the addicts to finally reach and see that recovery is possible. Because, recovery is possible. There's a better life in recovery. Addiction is just Satan trying to beat you down and bring you down, and that's not where God wants you to be.
True. Another thing you should mention as far as how you are involved is you're the custodian for the church.
Yes. I used to work at a hotel, and when I left the hotel because I had my daughter, and I was looking for I was contemplating on going back to the hotel, but I didn't because Pastor Tony reached out to me and asked...
How'd you meet that crazy dude?
That's funny. I met Tony...
Every story involving Tony's funny.
I don't remember exactly how I met Tony, but I remember meeting Tony here at the church, and I immediately fell in love with him. I mean, he is like one of the best pastors that I have ever met. And Pastor Tony, I think we were either the first or second husband and wife that he actually married.
Oh, wow.
So it was pretty incredible. Tony officiated our wedding in 2018, and then once our daughter was born, Tony did my mom's funeral, and he also baptized my daughter on Easter of last year. So I've reached out to Tony quite a few times, not just for church purposes, but for also personal purposes. And he gives the best advice. He really shows that he cares about his I'm going to say his flock, because he is the shepherd, and he really truly cares about everybody. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's hilarious. My daughter still does not like him in person, but we can watch online and she's perfectly fine. But in person, it's a different story.
All right, we're gonna have to make sure Pastor Tony hears that part.
Oh,
I'm sure
yes.
it'll just make him happy. That he frightens small children.
Exactly. But we're still working on it. But yeah. But like I said, I can play it at home, play it on TV, and she's perfectly fine.
Right.
But the moment she sees him in person, it's a total nope. Nope. She wants nothing to do with it.
All right, so last question. If you had unlimited time and resources, what would be the thing you would want to go build or serve in or do? What's your vision? What are you passionate about? What do you have a heart for?
The homeless and the addicts. I would love, if I had unlimited resources, I would, especially here in Goshen, we don't have a homeless facility for men. And I know that there are a lot of men out there that are homeless and that are struggling. Not only single men with no kids, but also single men with children. And I would love to have a facility or build a facility that would be perfect for them. It would, and give them the resources that they need to get back on their feet, and to get into recovery and So yeah, that's one thing that's really been heavy on me lately. I just don't know the steps or process to go about it. And so I've just been praying about it, and I know God will lead me in the right direction eventually when it's His time.
Anything else you have to add before we end?
St. Mark's is mainly, it is a little church, but it's also big. We are a open door, no matter what background you come from, no matter what lifestyle you live, it doesn't matter how you dress, we will always welcome you with open arms. And that's one thing that St. Mark's has always been. And especially now I see it. I see it more now. In the past 5 years, this church has grown not physically, but more emotionally and dynamically. And that's what I love to see in churches. We're not this big, huge,
Mega church. We're a small town, local, close-knit family. And that's what a church is about.
Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name.
Exactly.
I will always look for opportunities to sing that song.
Exactly. But yeah, there have been things that have happened in this church that kind of have upset me.
It's almost like it's a family and they get on your nerves.
But it is a family, and it happens. You just got to learn to forgive and move on. So yeah, this church is home to me. It will always be home. And I want my daughter to grow up knowing that she has a church family that will do anything for her in any type of situation, because I know that they have for me.